Hi everyone, this is Stephanie with Hightower Stitching, and today this is 193B. This is going to be piggybacking on what we did on 193, that nice block, because after I watched the video, I really didn't like that I went so quickly through the triangle squares, because some of you may not have known much about it. And the other thing was to look at the way that I finally made the block, and I finally got it down to an art, because I've got about 54 of them done and getting on the end, and it's really turned into fun. So I just want to share those two things with you today. The first thing was going back to the squares, and if you remember, you draw a line down the center from one point to the other, and then you come out 1/4 of an inch on each side of that line, and you draw a line like with a mechanical pencil. And then that's going to be your stitch line, the outside. And then after I got that done, then I was showing you a nice way to clip. And this is like a little square, and it's a little red one there, and you can see it goes in. And then you can turn and go in that way, but what I did is I just turned my box, and then I come back out to my stitching line, and you can see the little corners missing. And then on the other end, because you're going to do this anyway, and now you're going to cut these two pieces apart, so why not just go ahead and do that while you're there? Okay, then you take and you cut down the center. Now, if you remember, we talked about whether you made your blocks 2 7/8 or 3 inches. Well, I considered that I was going to be checking them anyway, because I have to get them down to 2.5 inches. They have to be square. So I just went ahead and did 3, and that made it really easy to cut out as many as you have, because if you think about it, you have to have 4 dark squares and 4 light squares for each one that are 2 7/8 or 3 inches wide, and you got to do that for 64 of them. So it's a lot easier to cut 3-inch ones. So we did that, and then just took and opened them and finger pressed it. But you are going to take this and take it to the iron. Once you get a nice little stack, maybe go 10 blocks and do them, or 5 blocks. And at first you probably maybe just even do 1 block, and then press it open, and then when you take it to your iron. Okay, so here's one of the things I was going to say too, is sometimes, like some of my light colored fabrics, when I tried to use my pencil and make that light line on there, the material wanted to move. So I always try to remind you to use this kind of paper here, right? Oh my gosh, I went brain dead. That you use for sanding, sandpaper, to help it hold it in place. That's a good reminder. So now what I wanted to do was go back and look at turning that into the new block that you have, into your 2.5 inch block. And lots of times I'd look at these little corners, and you'll see that some are perfect. This one's not perfect, but that looks more perfect. So I'm going to turn around, and I'm going to use that as my main place right there. Now I took my ruler, and it's got a 45-degree line on it, and it's black. And today I was playing around, and I said, I'm going to take my permanent magic marker and see what happens. So I took the older one that I had, and I made my line through there. And that reminded me that I use sandpaper again, more coarse, to put the stickers on the back of there with glue, because that holds your ruler in place when you're trying to cut, not for this, but for anything. Okay, so now let's see if we can get this one. We'll line it up. This is going to be our important line, and we're going to lay this with that on that 45-degree line, but then you're going to slide it towards your left hand, because you only want these to be 2.5 inches. So we're going to take off some. And now you can see along both sides. And then I take my cutter. And you have a beautiful 2.5 inch square. And so let's look at this one and see how it looks. Well, both of these look about the same, but I still think I like this one better. I can see a nice point down here. So I'm going to set my ruler on there for the 45. And then I've got to get it to be 2.5. I'm going to slide it towards my left hand because that's the one that's off. This bottom one is pretty good, so I'm going to leave it there. Then always look back again at your middle, at your line. And when you think you've got it, then you take your cutter. Time consuming, oh yeah. Once you get this part done, the rest goes fast. And there are so many of them that you get to make your sets, because you're going to need 8 of these for each one of your blocks. So you have to have 4 darks and 4 lights to do it. And that makes that part. So that was one thing I wanted to show you. Okay, this is the second part. And this is actually putting your squares together. Now, I had a great idea that I was going to do this with that chain stitching too. Don't do it. You would just get nothing but frustrated. So what I did is I set one of my blocks so I could see it. And I always put the dark corner at the top so that was going to be my reference point. And then I set out my pieces, my 4.5 inch, and then my 2.5 inch that are going to be the corners. And then I had that little pile that we were just talking about. Now, what I did was I said, okay, I'm looking at the top pair in the center. And that's the way I'm going to do it this time. So I take and turn them so they sit like they do there and like they do that one. All right. And then very carefully make sure you remember where you're going to stitch them. And they're so small, they don't really need to be pinned. But they are small, so you need to have your catcher for your thread for your first stitch, because then it'll save making a mess. Turn that light up a little bit, see? And then I'm going to go, and I noticed I had it going so fast the other day, the machine that was making the light jump. So, and that's when I stopped, all right? I started at 12 o'clock. Then I went over to 3 o'clock. And I said, okay, this one's pointed that way, this one's pointed that way. I'm going to flip it down, and I'm going to stitch that one. And you'll always know that the first one is the top one, is 12, all right? Now, it was at 12, that was at 3, now I'm down at 6. It was amazing how easy this made it. It made it my life so much easier. And sometimes even when you trimmed them, there was that little tail on the end down there. So come and just cut that off because you don't need it. Let me check the camera. Hope I'm in the right place. Okay, I think we are. Okay, we're down to this one. This is the way they're laying. Because like I said yesterday, you can't tell when you're going to get off. And sometimes I just get off on myself. Yesterday, I did it myself because I'd be going along, and then all of a sudden I'd think of something, and lo and behold, I sewed the wrong thing together. So now I'm over at 9 o'clock. I've got that pair. I'm going to fold it down, and I'm going to stitch it. Okay, now, when I come back up to 12 o'clock, and first I would just cut off the very next one. This is going to be the chain part for this. So I took off the first one. I opened it up like it is up there, and there it's sitting. And then I'll finger press it real quick just to get it started. Now I need one of my dark pieces for the corner. So I'm going to put it on that left-hand corner, and I'm going to stitch it. All right, The very next one, that was 12 o'clock. Now I'm back to 3 o'clock. And there's nothing that we add to 3 o'clock. You can finger press it open because you're going to press everything when you get done. That looks right. Well, you're going to pick up, the only thing it can do is pick up your centerpiece and sew this on the right-hand side of your box, of that centerpiece. And I figured out one of the things that was making my machine, it was so loud, I realized. I had heard, one of the things that said, it's time to clean your machine, you know, underneath where the bobbin is and everything. And I opened it up, and yep, that was right. I usually try to do it after I do a big project. Okay, so I've now just added the 3 o'clock onto that one. Well, that puts me back down at 6 o'clock. And you can either add your white side or your dark side. And this is the one I just happened to pick up. And I think I'm going to go back to the white one just because. And I set it where it's supposed to be, turn it, and sew it. Okay, so now we have gotten that far. And we are back. I should not have been talking. I should have been being quiet. Okay, I'm going to pause you for a minute to get myself back in order. Okay, so I got another pair. Well, this pair is going to be over here on the west. But right now, the way my chaining's going, I can't get to it. So I'm going to take the next thing that was on there, and that puts me back up at 12 o'clock. And at 12 o'clock, I have the dark on the left side, and when I look at my block, I know to put the light to the right. And we're not throwing this one away because we're going to put it on in just a minute. But you can see, I figured out I could keep going, and it was really nice. Okay, got that around. Next thing, I come up with the big box. Now, we can't put either one of the ends on until we get this other piece on, which is that piece that I said don't throw away. We're going to take and set it on there, and that's going to be right because it's going to look just like that. So I set it on and stitch. All right, so we're down to one piece that's floating around, and this is the last piece that I just took off. I'll finger press that open. I had the light one on this end. I need my dark one over here on this end. So now we've been around twice. And what's neat is the next one I cut off is going to be the top. So I'm going to finger press it because we're going to be matching those seams up in just a minute. And you can do it one of two ways. And we'll talk about that in just a second. Because the next one that I have is the square one. My center square. And you can either leave these pressed in, or you can open them. And I happen to open them. If you open them, one of the things I found was it's a good idea to come in here and just do a little triangular snippet out of there. Because when you get ready to press it, it will lay absolutely flat. If you decide to fold it to the side, you're going to see a little ridge, and that's just going to be your preference of the way that you'd like it to be. So now I'm holding it like it is, and I'm going to finger press these because this is actually one of my blocks. I'm not going to waste one of my 64 blocks. And I'll show you in a second when we almost have this done, 2 seams and this block will be done. All right, I'm going to take my dark, goes up there on the top, just like that, and I'm going to fold it over. And I'm going to pin mine so they're open. You can pin yours so that one seam goes one way and one seam goes the other way if you want to. And then you can do it and see what you like. So that's where there's a seam that goes together. And then over here on the other end is a seam that goes together. So I pin them first. And you can put as many pins in there as you want, of course. And then the center one, that's just going to be there. All right, so I'm ready. I got everything matched up. And I just keep, I'm still adding on. Okay. I'll try and jump that pin. Got lucky. That's a bad idea, but okay, here we go. Get that side in. And now I'm going to take the whole thing off because guess what? The only part that I'm short is putting on the bottom. Here's the part we just did. And here again, because I'm going to open my seams, and I'm looking at this, there's a clump of material right there. And I just like my stuff to lay flat, and I like it not to be really thick. And just make sure you don't cut through your seam. And then when I get ready to iron it, I'll iron it open. So now here's the last one. Got it sitting like my pattern, the one that I kept out. This one, you have to have the white one to the left. So I look at it, and that looks right. I flip it over. I'm going to match up those 2 seams that have a seam on the one side and seam on the other. I hope this is helping. I got so frustrated yesterday. I said I'd start doing it one way, and then I'd go, oh, I think I liked the way I was doing it at first. Then it was like I had to teach myself how to do it again. Because I did find another way, but it didn't turn out like this where you go all the way around and you only break your thread one time there. Check and make sure. There it goes. This has been so much fun. I can't believe it. I mean, 64. But I actually took, like I said, I took a stack home, to another house over the weekend. And I had the most fun watching movies and sitting there and stitching. And there I've got it. It's ready to go to be pressed. I'm going to cut that one little side out. Okay, so we're not going to go press, but I'm going to take you on a little field trip into the dining room. And here's my stack of about 50. And then I've started just for fun laying them out so you could look at them. And I started seeing, it reminded me of things that are so neat that when you get ready to lay yours out, then go take a picture with your camera. But even now, looking through the camera, I can see where I've got it going with. I've got dark rows going diagonally, and I kind of like that. And I always put my colored block on the first row to the left. You might try playing with that and arranging them differently. But it's going to be 8 across and 8 down, so it'll be square. This is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I hope this helped you if you were going to work on this project, because it's a lot of fun and it works great for hand stitching. This is one recommendation I'd make when you're doing the half triangle squares. I just go and run those up on the sewing machine because there's going to be so many of those to do. But then it becomes just delightful sitting there with the rest of the pieces. And I actually have seen a block that has a mistake. Usually it's my sister-in-law that finds those for me just by accident. So sometime when you have time, look real good and see if you don't see one that I've made a mistake. Thank you for watching.